Wings by Christine Church. 77, 78, 79. Kelly McCarran subconsciously counted the click of her heels as she trod along the dark street. Only one more block to Sophie's place, the small all-night cafe she visited on the way home after a hard day at work. Unfortunately, with the Main Street Bridge out due to construction, she had no choice but to take Drayton Lane, and that meant passing Drayton Manor. The dark street grew even darker, if that was possible, as she turned slowly onto Drayton. Just imagination. The hairs on the back of her neck tickled as they rose, and then she heard the sound. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Kelly picked up her step. The pace of the winged sound quickened. Her own heart pounded noisily, but her brain worked to ration what her ears knew was true. Too large to be a bat. Imagination. It's my imagination. She picked up a run. Heels clicked faster and faster. The bright red neon sign glared at her above. Quickly, she threw herself into the alcove of the doorway, huffing with lost breath. When she could breathe at last, she listened and heard nothing. She peeked around the corner. Empty black street. Dark clouds drifted lazily past a quarter moon. Trees stood still as soldiers at attention. No wind. Kelly laughed to herself at her foolishness for being so frightened. She didn't really believe all the rumors associated with the sound of the wings, but the reality of the murders was enough to frighten anyone. The near vacancy of the bar seemed to confirm this. She made her way to the back table, the same table, her usual. As she searched through her purse on the seat beside her for money to pay for her drink, a shadow canopied the booth. A quick startle. Pepper spray held tight in her fist. She didn't even know she'd grabbed it. "Whoa, Kelly, it's just me." Kelly saw the name tag before she saw the face. Tina. She realized then she had this poison pointed directly at the waitress's face. Her usual waitress, who held in her hand a glass of martini. Kelly's usual. "I know you like your nightly martini, Kelly, but no need to threaten," Tina laughed. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Tina." She placed the pepper spray back in her purse and grabbed the money, which she'd been reaching for in the first place. Tina placed the martini on the table, took the cash, and walked away giggling. Kelly felt so foolish. Too many times she'd heard about crazy stories associated with the Drayton place, and this night she had allowed it to get to her. She placed her head in her folded hands on the table, but a conversation being held between a man and a woman at a table directly behind her grabbed her attention. "There are no leads, no suspects, no evidence, nothing," the woman said. "No hair, skin, blood, or any other forensic evidence has ever been found at any of the crime scenes. That would be difficult for a human to pull off, especially more than once. They'd be bound to leave something. And what about the wings? They say it flies. People hear the flapping all the time, but have yet to see it." "I suppose you believe in ghosts, too," the man laughed. "Well, they say that old man Drayton's ghost is—" "Yeah, right," he interrupted. "And his ghost flies around mangling people. He died 5 years ago. No, it's some weirdo. The last body was torn in two. The top half was at one end of the street, the bottom half at the other." Their conversation continued, but Kelly couldn't stand to hear more. She gulped her drink down. She'd read the paper that morning. Another mysterious murder, like the ones that had been occurring at regular intervals in the city since last month. The bodies, often mauled beyond recognition, were always found in the morning in the alley on Drayton Street, beside the mansion. Strange wing-like noises were rumored to have been heard on the nights the murders happened. The city streets had become increasingly barren as nightfall approached. Kelly flagged Tina. "Wow, you finished that fast." "Can I get another, please? I think I need it." Kelly reached once more for her money, but her hand shook so badly she could barely hold her purse. Tina's soft hands on her own calmed the trembling. "Relax, hon, you're safe." Kelly glanced up into Tina's deep green eyes. The quaking in her hand ceased completely. Her heart stopped racing. "That's better," said Tina in a soothing voice. "You're completely safe. They only kill who their master commands, so calm down." "What?" Had she heard Tina correctly? "I said you're going to kill yourself. Look at your hands. Calm down." Oh. She pulled her hands from Tina's and hid them under the table. Tina ran a hand softly over Kelly's hair, like a mother would when soothing a child. She smiled then and walked away. Kelly downed her drink again. She just wanted to get home. Only a few blocks, past Drayton Manor again. Tina was right. She was safe. This was ridiculous, believing in ghost tales. Leaving a hefty tip for Tina, Kelly walked back out onto the desolate street. Unfortunately, no taxis ran this time of night, and she had no one to call. Even so, she kept her cell phone in one hand, her pepper spray in the other. She turned the corner onto Drayton, and the wind picked up, lifting her hair and rustling her skirt. Why was it always so windy on this street? Mist rose upward from the warm pavement against the increasingly chilly air, and the light from the street lamps cast the shadows of wicked demons on the tall stone buildings. Kelly's footsteps seemed loud even to her own ears as she headed toward home. She found herself glancing back over her shoulder once in a while. The street's emptiness stretched far behind her. As she had before, she began to count her own footsteps when she neared Drayton Manor. 1, 2, 3. Her mind's way of shutting out thoughts of butchered bodies and the fear that welled within her. Even when she became aware of her actions, she continued her counting, the sharp clicks made by her heels, though now she listened as well for something else. A car, a voice from another living soul that would tell her she wasn't all alone. The woman at Sophie's had been right. Strange things had been associated with the old Drayton place. But then, bizarre happenings had always been connected with that mansion. As she passed it, she slowed, her gaze wandering out of habit over the rusted wrought-iron fence, the tall hewn stone walls with overgrowths of ivy and moss, and the decadent marble pillars with the intricately carved gargoyles perched atop them. They seemed ready at any moment to pounce on any who passed by their territory. They only kill who their master commands. The quarter moon cast slivers of silver light on the place and gave it the eerie appearance of an ancient Transylvania castle. While Kelly was growing up, the Drayton mansion had been the source of innumerable dares. It stood out amongst the nearby tenements, enshrouded as it was with weeping willows and ivy vines, and the old man who resided there only added to its mystique. How many times as a child had Kelly and her friends summoned the courage to climb the wall, knock on the old oaken door, and then run, or toss pebbles at one of the shuttered windows in hopes of catching a glimpse of the mysterious ancient man within. But now the house was nothing like she remembered it. Since the old man's death, kids had become more audacious, more reckless, leaving their marks with cans of bright-colored spray paints. For the first time, Kelly realized how everything around it appeared dead. The withered flowers, the brown shrubs, even the willow trees seemed in some crazy way to mourn the old man's passing. Everything but the stone gargoyles perched like vultures above the property's entrance. They seemed as alive as ever as she stepped into their moonlit shadows. She looked up at them, into the lifelike eyes. A movement, a twitch of a wing. A flash of light from a nearby street lamp coruscated on the wing of one of the great beasts, and it appeared to move. My imagination. Kelly forced her eyes shut, then opened them again. The statue stood still, as a stone ornament should. A raw gust of wind slapped her with stinging droplets of rain, breaking the mesmerizing spell of the gargoyle's eyes. Her gaze fell to one of the third-floor windows of the dilapidated old mansion. Someone was up there. She was sure she saw a figure in the smashed panel of the window. It looked like... No, couldn't be. But she was looking right at the figure of a woman. A familiar woman. Tina. Instinct screamed at her, "Run." She turned on her heel and ran right into an old man standing behind her. She gasped and moved to pass him, to ignore him, but he took her arm. Simultaneously pulling her arm from his grasp, she glanced back to the window where she'd seen Tina. No one was there. "Awfully raw night for a pretty girl like you to be out on the streets," said the old man in a staggering tone. Kelly looked back at him. Once more she trembled, from fear, from cold, from the rain that came down harder now. "I don't suppose you could help a poor fella out who's down on his luck, huh?" Excuse me?" she stammered. He moved in closer to her. His breath smelled of sour wine and tooth decay. He wore baggy, soiled attire that apparently hadn't been washed in weeks or longer. The rush of relief that overcame her left her weak and shaky. He was terribly thin, his face marred by a craggy, ruddy complexion, the lines of time and too many years hitting the bottle. Hardly the picture of a ruthless, axe-wielding murderer. "I'd stay as far from that building as possible if I was you, young lady," he said, with an air of concern that reminded her of someone's grandfather. She decided to play dumb, to ignore where she stood, the rumors, if they were such. "Well, what are you talking about?" She backed up a step. The wind carried the stench of his unbathed body in her direction. Her stomach twisted. "There's evil present, an evil that kills." "You're drunk." She backed up another step. "Don't think me an old fool. I've been around a long time. I've seen it." He glanced away from her toward the old house, and then up to the stone gargoyles, still keeping vigil over the property. "They were built with the house a long time ago, near the turn of the century, I believe. Their purpose was to protect, and that they did." He looked back into Kelly's eyes. She crossed her hands over her chest so he wouldn't see them shake. "But Drayton, the old fool who built the place, owned this street. He left them alone when he died. No inheritance for his pets. But they have a new master now. A woman. She watches. She commands." Kelly couldn't find the words to say what she thought. "Tina?" The vagrant took an obviously painful breath. "The youth of today. No respect." He gazed back at the house. "Look what those kids have done. Breaking in. Graffiti. Drayton's pets. They're angry." Kelly started to backstep down the street, away from the crazy old drunk, but he continued talking. "Walk quietly, you hear? Running makes you look guilty." He jerked a thumb toward the graffiti-covered walls in front of the mansion. "They'll think you're one of them." Despite his words, Kelly turned and bolted away. Above the sound of the vagrant's words in her mind, she heard another sound. The sound of beating wings. A scream rose in her throat. When she spotted an open doorway in one of the tenements across the way, she dashed toward it, across the road, focused, not looking. A honking horn, a screech, wings, curses from a voice as the car passed, missing her by an inch. The air shifted, a brush against her flesh as she leaped into the doorway. The hard floor stung on the palm of her hands as she landed. She rose quickly and slammed full-bodied into the door to close it. The noise stopped. Her heart raced wildly as she slumped exhausted to the floor. A minute passed. 2 minutes, before her breath finally caught up with her. "How will I get home?" she thought, as she stood slowly and peered out the fogged window near the top of the door. The street stood empty as before. Even the old drunk was gone. "Stupid imagination," Kelly said quietly as she stood laughing in an attempt to relieve her tension. She opened the door just a crack and peered out, glared across the street toward the old stone building, and what she saw made her laughing fall abruptly short. Above the entrance to the Drayton mansion was nothing but empty stone slabs. Both the gargoyles were gone.